What's good, y'all? Today we're gonna be cooking up some R&B. I'm gonna show y'all how to make fire R&B melodies every single time. First thing I want to get into is sound selection and what VSTs you should use and stuff like that. So for R&B, I usually like to use Omnisphere or Analog Lab. So I'm gonna go into Analog Lab and I'm gonna pick out one of the sounds from my R&B multi-kit 3 a.m. It includes an Analog Lab bank and one-shot versions as well, so I'll be using those. So I'm just gonna pick one of these key presets. When I'm making R&B, especially with modern R&B, I like to go between the 80 and 100 BPM range. You could also do 120 to 140, that works as well. For this, I'm gonna do 90 BPM and I'm gonna start out with some chords. So when I do my R&B chords, I like to incorporate a specific chord usually. So I'll do something like this, start at the root note. This is just a regular triad here. I made this just by skipping every other note in the scale. And the chord that I always like to go to and incorporate in a lot of my R&B melodies is this one right here. So this is just a normal minor 7th chord, but what I like to do is take this note and actually move it up one semitone out of key, so it becomes a diminished chord. And even though this note is out of key, it sounds really good and always gives it an R&B vibe. Also, I like to usually make all my chords 7th chords, so I'll add one more note on top, and sometimes I'll even do a 9th chord, which is just adding another note. So let's hear how this sounds so far. So those two sound pretty good together. Now I'm just gonna follow my ear, and I believe this is the next chord that I want to hear. So yeah, I like how that sounds. Like I said, to get that R&B vibe, you just want to use 7th chords by adding that extra note on top, and use this diminished chord. It's going to be the 4th note from the root note if you're in a minor scale. So we're in G sharp minor, so it is D sharp here, and there's another note in the scale that's just one semitone above it, like this E here, and these two tend to go really well together. So I like to use these two chords in a lot of my R&B melodies. So next thing I'm going to do is just copy the root notes down an octave just to make this sound a bit more full, and I'm going to randomize the velocities and strum it as well. Alt R and Alt S. Here's what we got. Definitely an R&B vibe. So I added these two top notes just to add some variation on this side. Another thing you could do with your chords is invert some of the notes. So for example, we could take this one down. This also makes the notes closer together, which usually sounds pretty good. So we'll see how that sounds. Yeah, so I like that more, so I'm gonna do the same thing on this side. Also, one thing I'd like to mention is that these two are just notes that are in the chord. So usually when you use notes in the chord as your top lines, it sounds pretty good. All right, so next thing that we can add to this is some layers. So I'm going to open up another instance of Analog Lab, and I'm going to go back to the 3 a.m. Analog Lab bank and find a pad that I could layer this with. Yeah, so that sounds really good. So I'm just going to go into the one-shot versions and pick out one of these basses. So that fits really well. And now I kind of want to get into counter melodies. So with R&B, I usually tend to keep the counter melodies pretty sparse. and kind of spaced out to give room for the artists. So I'm actually going to use some of the phrases from this kit as well. There's also phrases. So I just added one of the synth phrases from 3 a.m. on top of this, and here's what we got right now. That's sounding pretty good. And now I'm gonna just add another counter melody using one of the leads from the kit. I'm gonna be using a one-shot version. The one-shots are just one-shot versions of the Analog Lab presets. So I just made this simple lead melody. Here's how it sounds. I'm also going to add one more simple melody using a bell one shot. I made a simple melody using the Stargazer bell from the 3 a.m. one shots. Here's how it sounds. So yeah, I really like that sound. It has a lot of character. All right, now I'm gonna start getting into some effects and how I like to use effects when it comes to R&B melodies. So usually I like to drown everything in reverb. So starting with the key, I just put some reverb. I'm gonna also put an EQ and take some of these lows out. Do the same thing for the pad. Also on the pad, I'm going to add a sidechain in gross beat. You can do that by going up here to the presets, repeater, sidechain A, or sidechain B, whichever one you prefer. What this does is it makes the volume kind of come in and out, and it's going to give it some bounce and rhythm. I like to put this on pads a lot. So I'm going to leave the bass the way it is. So for this bell, I really want it in the background, so I'm going to put a lot of reverb on it. I'm also going to put delay. EQ it. This synth phrase is mixed pretty well already, but I'm going to just put some reverb on it just to make it a little bit more spacey. I gotta put reverb on this as well, and I'm gonna put delay. So I ended up changing this lead sound because I kind of want it to be a bit more subtle. So I'm using the spoken lead one shot instead. Alright, last thing I want to add to this melody is a vocal sample. So I'm going to go into the phrases again, and I'm going to find a vocal sample that I like. So I added these two vocal phrases from the kit. Here's how they sound without effects. So yeah, that sounded really clean. Now I'm just going to put some effects on these vocals. So I just put a reverb and an EQ on it. Also going to add a subtle delay. So I just put sound shift on the master, and I'm just to change the pitch. Here's how the finished melody sounds with all the sounds playing together. That's pretty much it for this one. I hope y'all did enjoy. If you do want to get all the sounds that I used in this, and I mean every single sound I used to make this loop is in my 3 a.m. multi-kit. The link will be in the description. It has loops, it has phrases, it has one-shots, analog lab bank, and it also has R&B MIDI compositions, so you can use those MIDIs to start out R&B melodies easily. The link will be in the description, so definitely tap in if you're interested in that. If you did enjoy this video, please comment, give me a like, subscribe, do all that. Stay tuned, more videos on the way, more kits on the way, and that's about it. Peace.